Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. Hey guys, so we are back with another episode of Paris History Avec a Hemingway, and I'm very excited about who we're talking about today because it's somebody that you all know. I know we were kind of focusing on some off-the-map ladies, but this is someone you all know, Coco Chanel, and Claudine has a lot of interesting and maybe shocking information about Coco, a lot of things that I didn't know either because we always kind of idolize her. So it's kind of curious all the things she did in her life, and I'll let Claudine explain more on that.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Yeah. So Coco Chanel, this is going to be one that I think some people will be like, what? Mm-hmm. But Coco, or Gabrielle Bonheur Chanel, is it was her born name. She was born in 1883 in August, and she was born down in the Saumur, down in the Loire. And she was born to a very poor family. And her parents weren't married at the time, but she had 5 other siblings. But they were a very poor family. Her father spent most of the time peddling pots and pans and clothes, doing anything he could do to make money. When she, they just had a very sad, poor life. And so when she was 12 years old, her mother died. And her father sent her 2 brothers, basically kind of, not a better way to say this, but kind of sold them to a farmer, like, you're going to go out and work, and here you go. And then the 3, Gabrielle and her 2 sisters, he sent to an orphanage.
Wow. Gosh, abandonment to the extreme.
Yeah. So she basically just kind of was sent, they were all sent away. But when she was at this convent, she actually learned how to sew. So it might have been, good things came from this. But she, lived there at this convent. Her father would come to visit maybe once or twice, but she really never had any interaction with him really ever again.
Wow. So after that, you'll talk about this later, but did they reconnect later in life?
No.
Oh, that was it. Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. So she kind of, helped, she and her 2 sisters, they kind of, helped raise each other and take care of each other. When she was 18, she, aged out of the orphanage. And so she ended up going to a nearby town, and she started working as a seamstress, because she would learn how to do that, when she was little with her mom, and also in the convent. So she was working as a seamstress. And then at night, she would go and sing at some of the little cabarets in town.
She's a singer too.
Yeah. So she and her sister would go, and they'd get on stage, and they would always be like the filler in between the acts. So she'd get up there on stage, and she'd sing this song, and it was called Who Has Seen Coco? And it's like, she says, Coco, Coco. And so that's where they say she got her name.
Oh, I had no idea. Yeah, that's so cute.
Because she kept saying this. She used to tell the story that it was her father was in the morning. He'd wake her up and go, Coco Rico. And so that's where she got it. Mm-hmm. But that's where she also kind of tried to repaint her childhood.
I think I would too, considering all the terrible things.
Yeah. But I also like the Coco Rico, because that's like one of my favorite French words. It's the sound a rooster makes. Coco Rico. Like we say cock-a-doodle-doo. They say Coco Rico. I just think it's way cuter.
Definitely way cuter. I agree with that.
Yeah. So, but while she was at this cabaret singing, she ended up, these men would kind of try to talk to her and stuff. And she kind of really didn't want to have anything to do with it. Like she just kind of wanted to, she actually really wanted to be an entertainer. She wanted to be a singer and an entertainer. That was kind of what she really wanted to do. But she ended up meeting this man, and his name was Etienne Balson, and she was 23 years old at the time. And they kind of became friends, and then got involved. And then he convinced her to come move out to his chateau. with him.
I mean, that I'd be convinced to do that pretty
Yeah,
easily.
exactly. So she went out to go live with him, and it was outside at the Chateau in Compiègne. And so she went and lived with him, and he, was like this lavish lifestyle in the chateau with, there's all these horses, and, he was giving her jewels and fancy clothes and stuff. But she kind of that really wasn't her taste. She didn't really like this whole corseted, and everybody wearing these big, huge hats and dripping with jewels. Like, I don't see a problem there, but
too over the top for her, which is kind of funny considering her brand is so luxury now.
Exactly. Yeah. So she was there, and she, one day, a good friend of his came to the chateau, an Englishman named Edward Boy Capel. Everybody called him Boy. That was his nickname. And so they met about a couple years into her relationship with Etienne. They started having a relationship, and she completely fell head over heels in love with him. And at this time, she already was starting to make hats. So she would make these straw hats, like design these straw hats. And this friend of Etienne's would come, that she was a stage actress, and she gave her one of the hats one time, which was very understated for the time. It's just like I don't think you'd call them a bowler, but they're kind of just the plain straw hats, kind of real boxy. And she gave her one of those hats. And so it kind of like, because she was a stage actress, people were like, oh, that's, where did you get that hat? So she, Coco started designing hats at the time. And while she was with Boy, they were together for quite a few years, and he ended up getting married, but they still saw each other, and they would go away on weekends together. And they went to Deauville. She was there. She saw like the fishermen, and she saw what they were wearing, and saw this a little bit more relaxed look from some of the people. And she was inspired by it. And so that's when she just decided to start designing these dresses that, weren't corseted, that were comfortable, that, were kind of more straight up and down, made of really lightweight fabric like jersey and stuff that was comfortable, not the, women that were just completely tied together.
Yeah, it was very hot and uncomfortable. You were just kind of like a museum piece to be looked at.
Yeah, and the women wore that on the beach. Could you imagine?
Yeah, no, not at all. I'm wondering, like, I always think of that too when I see these old-timey dresses and all the fabric. I'm like, was it because there was like not climate change? Like,
yeah,
things colder then? It's like, seems like it would be way too hot now to be wearing these giant dresses to the beach.
Oh yeah, you had to have people to help you get dressed. You had, it's just like it would take you, an hour to get into some of these, with corseted, it's like under pieces and corsets and everything else on top of it.
Now we've gone to like sweatpants and Crocs.
Exactly. And part of that we could blame on Coco. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Coco.
But she kind of just decided to start doing this. She started making, she was always drawn to black. And so at the time, nobody wore black unless you were in mourning. Like you did not wear black. So she, would find these French fabrics like jersey and this really soft cotton that actually was made for men's underwear.
Ah, interesting. What a great idea.
Yeah. So she was like, oh, this feels so much better, so much more comfortable. And so she started designing clothes from it.
So the men even got the more comfortable underwear.
Yeah.
So unfair. Women had different fabric, I guess.
Yeah. So she started designing all this stuff, and then Boy ended up like seeing, she was getting this attention, and people were wanting to buy her hats, and at first people looked at the things that she designed her clothes like aghast, like that's not what women shouldn't be wearing things like this. So, but she started really taking off, and so he paid for her first store in Paris. Number 21 Rue Cambon, which is, we'll get to the rest of that street a little bit later, but he bought her first store, and she started doing like crazy amount of business. So then they got another one out in Deauville on the beach. And she was still selling so much that she was able to they went and got another one at Biarritz. And at that point, she made so much money that she was able to pay him back for everything he ever did. And this is in 1920s.
That's amazing, especially coming from a woman, to have these men invest in her like that weren't even married to her. She was the mistress, it sounds like.
Yeah. So by, actually it was the 1910s, because by 1918, she bought the building at 31 Rue Cambon, which is still to this day, the House of Chanel.
Oh, wow. Okay. That was the place I told you about. I photographed
Yeah.
inside. Oh, it's so cool inside there.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was the original place. She was just out and about buying buildings.
Yeah.
And wow, good for
19
her.
in 1918. Like that's like the World War One.
And did she have a boyfriend at this time, or was she still just like?
She just still was with Boy. Like she still was they were still involved. And the next year in 1919, he was in a car accident and died.
Oh, so sad.
Yeah, so she was pretty devastated from when that happened. But I can't, like I think it kind of spurred her along because within a few years she bought 4 more buildings on that same street. So from 23 to 31, she has all of those buildings.
She was just buying up Paris.
Yeah, buying up Paris. A woman in the 20s.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she was worth $15 million in the 1920s.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't for these men investing in her, do you think that she could have done what she did? It sounded like she needed the help in the beginning because she had no money.
Yeah, I think she did. And I think that like she definitely had, she probably definitely had abandonment issues. So I think that if she didn't, if he didn't step up, and I think he kind of pushed her to do this, that, I don't know. I mean, I think maybe she would eventually, but I don't know if she would have, had the gumption to really want to go do it because, she kind of just, I think she thought at first, she was like, no, I can't do this. And people made fun of like the things that she was wearing because she would dress kind of like a boy a lot of the time.
Yeah, they believed before she did.
Yeah, I mean, she's wearing clothes that, she's making clothes and wearing clothes that women should, was not the fashion at the time. So, yeah, but he basically, I mean, she started this, huge empire, pretty early.
Yeah, she was definitely a pioneer of her time. So what happened next? She's killing it, making millions of dollars, buying up Paris, and then World War II happens?
Well, before that, in the 20s, she wanted to make her perfume. So she created, the infamous, as everybody knows, the most popular best-selling perfume in the history of perfume, Chanel No. 5.
And how did she get into perfume? Like, why?
She was a pretty smart business lady. Was like, well, I want to do this and now I want to do that, and so she was working with a perfume maker, and he brought her all these different samples, and there was 9 different samples. There was 1 through 5 and 20 through 24, and he basically brought them all to her, and she sat there and she smelled them each, and then she just said, okay, it's number 5.
Oh, so that's why it's called Chanel No. 5.
Yeah, she also it was one of her favorite numbers when she was a kid. She always would say that 5 was always her favorite number, so it always stuck with her. But she picked sample number 5. So that's why it's called Chanel No. 5.
I love that. I had no idea. My mom has that. And I'm like, I have no idea why it's called this.
Yeah. So, I bought it on my first trip back from Paris at duty free. I was like, I need to buy something to remember. And
duty free is like a whole $2.
I know, exactly, practically. But so she designed it, and she even wanted the bottle. She said she wanted the bottle to be invisible. Because a lot of times the perfume bottles were dark, dark glass. So she wanted to be clear and invisible. She had the shape of it designed from one of the toiletry bottles that Boy had in his toiletry kit. And so she had this, at first it had this tiny little stopper that kind of just, you basically kind of had a button, you kind of tied it down. And then a few years later, she changed the stopper, and it said, if you look at the top of it, so look at your mom's bottle when we get done, it is actually at the top of the bottle is the shape of Place Vendôme.
I had no idea.
Which is where the Ritz is.
Very cool.
And I think that's one of my favorite little fun facts. But
I love that. I'm going to go look at it.
Yeah. So she, made this huge thing. She was making a ton of money on the perfume. So then in the 1924, but the urging of a friend of hers that was the founder of Galerie Lafayette, he said, if you want this to be bigger, you need to, talk to this. There's these men that I know, the Wertheimer brothers, and you should talk to them to make your perfume empire. So she talked to these guys. She took no lawyer. She didn't do anything. She agreed to everything they said. She basically ended with only having a 10% stake in it.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Just basically kind of just gave it away. And she was fine with it. She was like, okay, whatever, no problem. So yeah, that'll come back up here a little bit. Yeah. But so at the same time, she kind of kept meeting like these infamous men that were, not completely available in in the same time that same time she met Duke of Westminster, Hugh Grosenor, and his nickname was Bender. And so she had this huge long affair with him, and he was, because of him, she was able to meet Churchill. She ended up meeting why can't I think of his name? Prince Edward, that he was supposed to be the King of England. And then he was, he ended up getting involved with Wallis Simpson, the American divorcee, and then abdicated the throne. So with her relationship to Bender, she ended up getting to meet all these other people, but then she also got a little something else. So Bender was a huge anti-Semite. He hated anything that had to do with the Jews in Europe, just hated them. All of that kind of bled into good old Coco a little bit.
Yes, rubbing elbows with these people. You can't help but take on some of their ideals.
Yeah. So she ended up he constantly was always saying this. This was the beginning of the 1920s. So they were involved for years and years. So she was around that for a long time. Then she ended up meeting after that another man named Paul Irbe. He was a Frenchman. He was also an illustrator and had these huge, super right-wing ideals. He ended up writing this newsletter that were just crazy conspiracy theories and anti-foreigners and anti-Jews. And good old Coco, with all her money, helped pay for it.
Eesh.
Yeah. So she kind of was she was so, absorbing all of their thoughts, but these were definitely thoughts that she had herself.
She supported them.
Yeah, she definitely said, but she wasn't pushing them away for their ideals.
She was sleeping with them.
Yeah. So they were together for a while. He ended up actually dying on the tennis court, and she was there with him when he just had a heart attack and collapsed.
She doesn't have much luck with the love life.
She really doesn't. It just gets worse. So the next year, in the mid 1930s, her employees decided to go on strike, and she one day went to go, to the atelier, and there was a sign on the door saying that they were closed and that they basically walked out. So she was livid because her employees and, I do all of these things for you. How dare you do this to me? You can't walk out. So that kind of started a bad little situation that they were in. And then we're right now, we're almost at the start of the war. She was, pretty angry most of the time with, the foreigners and the Jews that were in Paris. Now she's mad at her employees. She's starting to get really ticked off about realizing how much money she was losing because of her perfume. So at the start of the war in 1939, she, her atelier had opened back up. She, at the start of the war, decided to just instantly close it down, put 3,000 people out of work. So she, and it was early, and a lot of the other fashion houses in Paris were like, what are you doing? This is it was 1939. It was the start of the war. It was before the occupation. They didn't obviously know that was coming, but, why are you doing this? And why are you just putting all your people out of work? So she ended up doing that. And at the same time, she was trying to figure out, she had been living in the apartment that you had seen, which, I'm dying to see photos of that.
I'll share those with you.
but she ended up then going and moving into the Ritz, just right across the street. I mean, the Ritz is literally right across the street. If you walk outside the door from her place, you could walk to the back door that's not open anymore, but you could walk to the back door right into the bar Hemingway at the Ritz. Right across the street.
So close. Yep.
Yeah, so she had moved into the Ritz. And so there are a lot of other people were doing that. Prince Edward and Wallis were there. All of these really elite English people, Americans, French people were living at the Ritz. So as the war started, as occupation started, the Germans came and moved into the Ritz. And
they picked all the best places.
I know. They're Hotel Lutis, all of these places. So they moved in there and they kicked everybody else, but they didn't kick old Coco.
Coco was welcome.
Yeah, she was welcome, which was kind of I think a pretty big clue at the time. Wait a minute, how is it okay that she's still there? So she was living there, and she ended up meeting the Baron Dinklage, who was a Nazi spy, and his nickname was Spats. So she ended up meeting him, and they had torrid love affair.
Sounds like a pattern.
Yes, again. And so she was living there in the seventh floor of the Ritz, and he was just down the hall, and they'd have dinner every single night. Then she'd go back to her room, and they were together all the time. He took her to work with him one day, and she was, meeting all these high-ranking Nazi officers. She would end up meeting Goering, who is just this other horrible Nazi that was involved in the looting of the art of Paris. So she was kind of surrounded by all of these, she was spending all of her time with these people, and she didn't seem to have a problem with it. Then she decided, she just was between the Jewish brothers that she thought stole her perfume and everything else that was happening. She then goes and turns in to the Nazis all of the names of her employees that worked for her that were Jewish.
Yeah, so she had some beef with Jewish people, it sounds like.
She definitely did. So, yeah, she's just not, the more things I read, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, that's really disheartening. It's like,
very disheartening. But she was involved with spats for quite a long time. And she was even involved they were using her because she was friends with Churchill. She would even say, like, well, I have this relationship with Churchill, we could use this. So she was actually, at one point, she had talked to a friend of hers, Vera Batt, who was a friend of hers since the 20s. She was her PR director for the House of Chanel, Vera's how she met Churchill and all of these, with Prince Edward, all of these people. So she said, oh, well, we could get Vera and, we could probably go do something about this. So they ended up going and putting together, it was Vera and Coco and a couple of the people. And then they were sent down to Spain to basically spy.
So she was spying too.
Yeah, for the Germans.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had heard that she was on trial because I knew it was such a mess after the war ended because there were a lot of people. I had always just thought that she was just trying to survive because it was war times. The Nazis were occupying Paris. So a lot of people, would play nice because you're trying to eat and not be shot. But it sounds like she was much more involved than just playing nice and surviving.
Yeah. And all of this came out in 2011 and then again in 2014. A whole bunch of documents were released. And all about, documents that have like her code name and all of this information about her and how and everything that she did. Because at first she was able to like, oh, no, I just fell in love with this guy. And he was only part German. He was also part English. So she kind of played it off. But then like over time, more and more information and like documents have come out to like, and it's not just like one or two documents. It's like 60, 70, 80 documents.
So why did she go to prison after the war?
Well, after the war, after all this happened, she went down to Milan and then this didn't work out. Vera wasn't told. She said, let's go down to Milan or let's go down to Spain and look for a place to open a shop. She didn't know. And then when she figured out, Vera was like, oh, no. And like completely denounced her, like labeled her a Nazi collaborator, didn't want anything to do with her. So at towards the end of the war, when they were figuring out like, okay, this is not going so good. It doesn't look like Germany is going to take over all of Europe. And so crud, what are we going to do? So she, towards the end of the war, right after at the end of August, she ended up putting a sign on her shop saying free Chanel No. 5 perfume to all the soldiers. So she was trying to like, figure out a way to like make herself look a little better. So they like lined up for like hours and hours to go in there and just get this free free perfume.
She was rebranding herself.
Yeah. And then to get, so like, they were like, oh, so all the Americans were like, oh, don't touch a hair, don't touch a hair in her head. She's great. So she did this and then she like quickly got out of Paris. So she goes to Switzerland and old Spats, old German Spats comes and meets her there. So she hides out there. They ended up like arresting her at one point. She gets arrested and Churchill gets her out of it.
Churchill saved her.
Churchill kept saving her.
Good friends to have.
Yeah. But during that time too, she was like during the war, she was trying to do everything she can to get her perfume company back. She tried told the Nazis, she said, like, oh, but these are Jews and they own my perfume. And the brothers were really smart. Right when the war started, they transferred the whole entire company to this Christian French guy.
So they trusted this guy to give it back after the war?
And he did. But it was just like, they were like, we don't have anything, and these guys, they left, they went to the US. They ended up opening up a factory in New Jersey.
Oh, Jersey.
Yeah, in New Jersey. Yeah. So he,
very French.
Yeah, but she was just like, no. And they were just like, Madame, this is the Frenchman owns this company.
So is that how it still is today? Like her family or whoever only gets 10% of the perfume, which is one of the biggest in the world.
Yeah, she ended up working out a deal. She took them to court, and they were in court for like 20 years. Like the suit was going forever. They finally agreed that she ended up getting a percentage of it, and then they paid her living expenses for the rest of her life.
Well, that's pretty cool. Free rent. That's usually our biggest expense.
Yeah. I mean, if you're Coco Chanel, you're not living at,
I was going to say, she owned like all of Paris. So I don't think she really needed to pay rent anyway.
Yeah. And at that point, I mean, she only lived like 15 or so more years anyway.
So what happened at the end of her life? Did she stay in Paris?
She stayed in Paris. She lives in Switzerland for a little while. She stayed in Paris. She still lived in the Ritz. In January 1971, she was 87 years old. And so one day she decided to go out for a drive. She came back. She said she wasn't feeling very well, and she laid down and she died that night.
So she died peacefully.
Yeah. But she had been using morphine since like the 1930s.
Yeah.
Like for her whole entire life. It's just, there's, when you hear this, because of course, obviously the Chanel brand doesn't put this out.
They're not advertising.
They're not really advertising this, in their stuff, which, it kind of brings up a big question as, can you look at, I kind of look at the woman differently than the business. Just because there's been a lot of time since all of this. And, for me and our generation, Chanel was Karl Lagerfeld. That's what I see as Chanel. And it's come a long way since then. But it's hard to look past everything she did.
Yeah. It's really, like you said, you have to separate those two things. You think about the same thing with politics today, like the president's cheating on his wife, but he did great things for the economy. Like, it's like you have to separate the two. And also she was like a pioneer. I mean, look what she did for women's fashion. She gave us some comfort. She gave us men's underwear.
Yeah. I mean, she came up with a little black dress. I mean, if you look at any of the things online, that's the quote unquote, dress like a Parisian, you look at that and it's still basically what Chanel did. Like,
they call it like the uniform, the French uniform.
Yeah. I mean, wearing black, wearing the red lipstick. I mean, like I've been doing that for years, but it's like that was, I mean, she inserted a level of comfort. She, freedom that people could dress kind of how they wanted to, she kind of, because of her, is kind of like, you could kind of look at all of fashion now going back to Coco Chanel.
Yeah, that we have to thank her for that, even though all this other stuff is very interesting. And like I was saying earlier, it's kind of confusing because it was such a difficult time. I'm trying to figure out, like, living during that time period, what your mind would be like. I mean, it's like kind of fight or flight situation, but at the same time, she was like rubbing elbows with the bad guys.
Yeah. I mean, she did things like, one time they went quote unquote shopping. Like she and Spatz would go to these homes that the Jews had to like just up and leave and go shopping for art and furniture. Like she was one of the richest women in the world.
Yeah, they're stealing the stuff. Yeah, there's no excuse for that. It wasn't like she needed to eat. She had money.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, like just kind of the idea of what she did just makes me completely disgusted. But, it's just kind of like at the same time that it's different than what she did as a designer. Not saying that it's definitely none of this is okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just kind of like, I don't know. I think if she was still alive today and this was happening, it'd be like, boycott the brand.
Yeah, like, okay, never mind. Yeah, but the thing is, it was easier to hide back then because there wasn't all the social media, the internet, the press was controlled like it still is today, but it was like there wasn't outlets.
Yeah, and the year after she died, Madame Pompadour, who was the wife of the president, wanted to have a huge celebration, for her after she died. And right away, information started coming out, and they decided they didn't do anything. They were like, we can't do anything. We can't be a part of this, because the French took a very long, and I think the only reason why she's probably forgiven now is because it's not really known and it's forgotten. Because
it's been too long.
It's generations later. So I think that, what she did, she came back out in 1954 with her first line of couture after over 15 years. And the French press just hated it. And I think, just like, because it was her.
Yeah. No, it's really curious how, history buries these memories in a way.
It is very interesting.
And we don't associate any of that with her today. When we think of Coco, we think of, little black dress, perfume, striped shirts.
Yes. I mean, what she did, what she did as a businesswoman was incredible, especially for the time. Yeah, we can't fault that. Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that information. And I'm sure a lot of people want to do a little more homework on her now. Are there places you recommend? There's a couple really great books. I will we'll list them all on the website after this, and so you could go and check them out. There's a couple of them that some are better than the others, and so I'll write up a little thing and let you know which ones they need to check out.
That would be great. We'll have to check out Claudine's website after, and that will be listed in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Claudine.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Paris History Avec Hemingway. If you want to find out some more, you could always find me on my Instagram page, Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, and that's BLEU, as in the French way to spell it. And each day I post a daily history lesson about a person or a place or something in Paris, or it's lots of fun facts. And then also at ClaudineHemingway.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter there.